Good evening.
Good evening.
Just
Hey, good
waiting
evening.
for giving people a few minutes to log on to our new where we moved to and log into the link if they're a little confused. So we'll give a couple of minutes just for that, and then we'll get started right away with everyone. But thank you for joining us this evening. While we're waiting, I hope everybody is having a good evening in this cold, brisk evening that we're having today. And last week, I think we were in 80s, and this week it's like crazy. I was like, man, I had the coat out. It's
Security
insane.
guard told
Yeah.
me I needed a coat.
It's a cold weather. And you know what always, I mean, for the parents on the call, it always interests me. How many coats are left at school? I'm it's one of those things, I have every year I have this conversation, and it's hilarious because I'm at school and I'm just like, why are there so many coats? You you walked out and you didn't feel anything? I think it's on Facebook, the live stream link. Let me pull it up real quick. Yeah, PCAB. There we go. Putting the live stream link in the chat. Oh yeah, somebody put it in there. There we go. Perfect. Thank you, Charlene. I didn't even see you put it in there. So you moving quicker than me.
It was easy to remember. That's the only reason I did it.
Yeah.
One thing I remember.
Right. So for the sake of time, we will just get started. But we got a healthy amount of people in the room, and I'm sure there are folks online that I just can't see. But I'd like to welcome everybody to tonight's November public meeting for PCAB, Parent Community Advisory Board. Thank you for joining us this evening. We are sure to have a great and exciting evening. Our agenda is going. Dennis, no pressure as I'm, bringing you in at all, but we're just, he's going to give us some information on gifted and learning tonight. We'll get student learning plans, the SLP updates. We'll have committee updates, general announcements, and then we'll adjourn from there. But the goal is to share with you as much information as possible. I'm excited. I was telling my PCAB members last night at an event that this is the best board that I am a part of, and truly enjoy working with this group of dedicated and committed individuals. And everybody is hardworking and moving, so I am grateful that I have this group of individuals that are working with me, because I definitely could not be in this position if not for the folks that are part of PCAB. So thank you. And we also all could not do this work without the participation of our our participants and people that attend our meetings, stop by our tables, invite us to activities, events, all of that. So we thank you all, and we're looking to make a difference and really be the voice of our families in the district. So thank you all for making this happen. So tonight, I'm going to first introduce Dennis Jutras. He is the district coordinator for gifted and advanced learning, pre-K to 12, and his team will be sharing information about gifted and advanced learning. So Dennis, without further ado, take it away, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate the fact there's no pressure on me whatsoever, which is why I brought half my office with me today. So if we could just confirm that everyone can see the slide. Is everyone seeing the slide?
Yes.
Yes, I see it.
Hi,
Yes.
thank
Yeah.
you. I love technology, but I trust it not one bit. Okay. So thank you again. Thank you for allowing the Gift and Advanced Learning team to join PCAB tonight. It's been a few years since we presented, so we want to provide some general updates. We're excited about a few things to share. So we'd like to talk about tonight just some general updates. We want to talk about an initiative that we are aiming to help reduce barriers in formal identification, especially of students of color and of low socioeconomic status in particular. We want to talk about our SANG initiative and then family outreach. Just want to remind everyone on PCAB, anyone joining us on this platform or through the live stream, that City Schools has had a formal policy and regulations regarding gifted and advanced learning since October 13th, 2020. We just celebrated the 4-year anniversary. I'm a nerd and I get excited about such things. Just some general information update that I'd like everyone to be aware of. We have more than 7,000 students identified formally as GAL students among one of the 3 tiers of formal identification within City Schools. That's the highest it's ever been since we've officially been tracking formal identification of students in City Schools. Currently, we're in our final weeks, of universal screening of all kindergarten students. This includes charter and non-charter schools alike. That's part of the policy and regulations. Our identification starts earlier than any other district in the state of Maryland, and it's earlier than most districts across the entire country. Most districts wait until 2nd or 3rd grade, and we felt that's far too late to start the conversation for our most vulnerable learners in many ways. Since 2023, we've processed more than 180 testing requests that were submitted by families directly. We have links on the City Schools website, which I'll talk about later at the end of this presentation. This past window of time from May to October, we processed more than 60 plus requests for whole grade or grade skipping requests for students on behalf of their families. We have updated the Gifted and Advanced Learning page on City Schools website. I welcome everyone listening tonight to visit that page. We have really good information. That's where the referral forms are located. Referral forms for both formal identification and whole grade acceleration are provided in English, French, and Spanish. We're trying to break down as many barriers as possible. There's also on that page are links to the 2024 compliance report. Every year I'm required to present to the school board, the teaching learning committee of the school board, how we're doing regarding the policy and regulation pieces. That's where we have all the data breakdown by subgroups, demographic groups, if we're being equitable in identification rates. So I'm not going to regurgitate all those things. It's on the City Schools website. You can find those links. And of course, you're more than welcome to join for the Teaching and Learning Committee meeting on January the 7th, where I'll be presenting the most recent update for this upcoming year. I do want to call out the fact that we have experienced a full decade of excellence in gifted and talented education. The state of Maryland has a designation called EGATES, which is Excellence in Gifted and Talented Education. I'm happy to report that City Schools is the only district that has had 10 uninterrupted years of schools, at least one school being recognized by the state. Again, 10 years in a row. I mean, for 10 years, every year, without interruption. We've had 20 different schools. The majority of our schools are the Title I schools that have been represented. And we represent the most diverse collection of schools across the entire state of Maryland. Most districts that have schools that get this designation are just K-5 configured. We have K-5s, we have K-8s, and we have 6-12 configuration. There's no other district in the state of Maryland that has a secondary school identified as E-Gate. So our team is quite proud of that. Alex runs point for us going forward. I know we have at least 3 to 5 schools that are applying for this designation upcoming year. And fingers crossed, I don't want to jinx it, but I'm rooting for 11 years in a row. At this point, I'd like to turn over to one of our newest colleagues in our office, Esther Gencheva. And Esther, you can introduce yourself if you like.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for letting us join tonight. As Dennis said, my name is Esther Gencheva. I am an educational specialist with the Gifted and Advanced Office. I'm also a mom of 3 boys, 3 twice exceptional boys. And one of them does attend Baltimore City Schools as a middle schooler now. And he's had an amazing experience because he was identified early as gifted and has been given lots of support to help him be successful with his academic career. And I wanted to chat with you tonight and share with you some of the ways that we have been working to make sure that all of our students throughout Baltimore City have the chance to have an equitable practice of being identified if they're part of the gifted and advanced community, but also have a chance to work with something that we call our analogy lessons. Now, what has happened, as Dennis mentioned, is that we've really grown. We've done a great job with identifying students. We have over 7,000 students now that are identified as gifted, but we have recognized in the past years that there were students that we were missing in our identification. Specifically, when we were looking at the identification rates of Title I schools and non-Title I schools, we saw a lot of disparities there. We noticed that even though we saw and were working with and teaching these incredibly bright, gifted kids in Title I schools, we were not getting them identified as gifted. So our team came together and there was a project, a research project that was led by Dr. Ray Limer and Joyce Jackson to try to figure out what it was that was preventing us from identifying these brilliant students across the district. And what the data uncovered for that research study is that, yes, those students were there. What they needed was an opportunity to have some practice with analogical reasoning, or analogy lessons, as well as technology. And what we found is that once they had practice with analogical reasoning, then those identification rates in the schools that we were running the pilot in increased by 19%. But we weren't done yet. We wanted to get it so that it was equitable. And when we added in the technology piece, giving students a chance to practice with the technology that they're going to be given this universal screener on, we then found that those rates were then normal. The distribution rates of identification happened normally across Title I and non-Title I schools. Next slide, please. So that data from that pilot and research study was compiled. And so then, we're not done. We wanted to get this across the city because we really wanted to make that impact and making sure that all of our students were able to be identified as gifted if they were gifted and they were given that fair chance to be identified on the universal screener. And so the GAL team, they approached some partners who've been working with, and we, proposed to them a partnership of being able to create these lessons so that everyone, all of the kindergartners and all the schools across the city would have the same type of lessons, the same type of technology practice, so that it would be equitable. And we found a partner with the Legends of Learning. You may have heard of Legends of Learning before. They have a great platform that has a lot of science and math lessons, mostly being used by older grades like elementary and middle school. Well, when Legends of Learning learned about our work, they agreed to co-create these digital games with us and these lessons with us. And in return for us helping them create these games, they gave us free access to their platform forever for our pre-K through our second graders. Now, the games that we created with them are in English and they're also in Spanish because we have a growing community of Spanish-speaking students, and we wanted to make sure that they also would have the opportunity to engage with these digital lessons in their native language. We still had further to go, though, because now we've created this. We then needed to make sure that it was accessible to everyone. So then the GAL office is partnered with our Clever team, and they integrated this new app into our Clever so that our 4- and 5-year-olds did not run into the roadblock of trying to put in passwords or the teachers having to do it for them. If you had little ones, you know that's not going to be easy, especially if it's 20 of them in the classroom. So instead, they were able to get clever badges. They just scan into their tablet, type the app or touch the app, and opens the games for them, so they're able to practice their legends analogy lessons. These are some pictures of some of the games. We work with quite a few different game developers at Legends of Learning. You can see they all have their own little spin, their own little flavor to it, which keeps the kids interested. But they're really engaging lessons, and the kids use them a lot, as you can see later on, which lets us know it's something that they're enjoying, and also data showing that they're growing when they're using it. Next slide. So you've heard me talk a lot about how these lessons help us with early identification, which is true, but it also benefits all of our students. So we want to make sure that everyone who hears about analogical reasoning understands that it's not just for practicing to be identified as gifted. Using these type of lessons strengthens our students' attention to detail. And when you're a little one, that's something that you really are taking in. You're taking in a lot of details. You're learning every day, so much information. They're just like sponges soaking everything up. But it can also be overwhelming. So what an analogical reasoning lessons will do is they help students practice their reasoning skills, make connections, that helps them simplify complex problems because they're able to connect it to something that they're more familiar with. And so we see growth in our students who practice these type of lessons throughout all of the lessons or the subjects that they study. Next slide. So we worked with Legends, and we rolled out and finished our games, and we were really excited. We rolled them out last year, December of 2023, to our kindergarten team. During this time, kindergarten was already in their testing season for the Naglieri, which is what we use as our universal screener. And so we got some traction. Some of the kindergarten classes began using it as part of their blended learning. But what we really saw is when it was time for our pre-K classrooms to have their curriculum rolled out to them from the Legends of Learning, they began to embrace it. They began their work in the February of this year and continue on through June. 22 schools utilize our Legends of Learning then. Now, this is available to all of our schools who have pre-K classes, pre-K kindergarten classes. But at that time, only 22 joined in, really leaned into it, began to almost pilot it for us to help us to, work through any bugs, but also gave us great feedback about how much their kids were enjoying it, and also how they found it was a valuable resource. And as can be seen, there's 293 hours of practice that was done. Now that's actually a lot of practice because these games are actually only about 10 minutes long. So that lets us know that not only did the kids use it once, but they would return to it. The teachers would return to it and allow them to continue to practice as they continue to grow in their reasoning skills. Next slide. So that time frame was about 7 months of practice. So it's about 200 hours of practice, maybe about 300. But this year, you'll see our implementation has really grown. We rolled it out in August to our kindergarten classroom again. We reintroduced them to it, and they began using it to get our students ready to be able to take their Naglieri, but also to get those reasoning skills sharp because they're coming in fresh. Some of them have never been to school before. So it was something that was really valuable to the teachers and our students. So this year we found that as of now, 69 schools have been utilizing our Legends lessons. Over 3,000 hours of digital practice has been logged as of yesterday, whenever we pull this report. And that lets us understand, besides the feedback that we're getting from teachers, that yes, this is a valuable tool because it's being used. Having been a teacher myself for 9 years, if it's not something that I find valuable, I'm not going to use it. We are busy. We've got a lot to do during the day. So this is not something to shake a stick at. Seeing that they are using it and their students are being encouraged to continue to use it lets us know that this is a valuable tool. And what's also interesting is pre-K usually begins their practice on Legends, as I mentioned before, in February. That's when their curriculum and their pacing guide comes out. But the pre-K teachers who've used it in the past found it so valuable that many of them have started using it already because they saw how how helpful it was in their classroom whenever they were using their blended learning, but also just help their kids with their reasoning skills. Yep. Next slide.
Well, the next slide is actually
Oh.
you're passing it off. But before you
Oh.
pass it off, I do want to say the reason we've invested so heavily money and time and creation of these is because we know from that pilot that Esther was talking about earlier that the greatest barrier is not even a racial barrier, but it's a low socioeconomic status barrier because students that don't have the resources at home are not accustomed to these kind of puzzle game type of approaches, and all the assessments that are used nationwide for determining higher than average cognitive ability rely on analogical reasoning. And if students have not been exposed to that previously, they're at a disadvantage compared to their more affluent peers. And so what we're trying to do is we can't fix poverty. What we can try to do is make sure that we're giving everyone a level playing field as they enter into the assessment arena. Now I'll turn it back to Esther so she can hand it off.
Thank you, Dennis. So now I would like to introduce you to my colleague, Alex Clough. Now, what's so amazing about Alex is that I actually met Alex as a parent before I joined the district office. Didn't know we were going to be working together. Like I said, I have 3 sons who are gifted. My youngest attends Baltimore City Schools, and I was invited to a social emotional support group for parents who are raising gifted students. And I learned a lot with her, not knowing we were going to be becoming colleagues later on, but I'm so happy to join her in this work of making sure that we are supporting and addressing the social and emotional needs of our students. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Alex.
Well, thank you. So as Esther already said, I'm Alex Clough. I'm an ed specialist in the Office of Gifted and Advanced Learning. And as she said as well, we know that gifted learners have not just academic needs that need to be met, but also social emotional concerns that may impact their learning too. And I'm not going to read through all of the bullet points here, but I just want to highlight a couple of these ideas very quickly. Irrational beliefs is one we don't always think about, but you may have known a child who felt like if they didn't get everything on the paper absolutely perfect, that was just a sign that they weren't that smart. Or that, if they were that smart, maybe they just shouldn't have to study and they would just magically know everything. So that kind of magical thinking, irrational belief is very common with our gifted learners. And sometimes we don't actually know what's going on and we have to sort of tease that out. Another one is that fear of being wrong and avoidance, that avoiding of intellectual risk taking, uncomfortable when there's a bit of productive struggle. So again, that's something that we want to sort of uncover and help a child deal with, because we don't want our kids to get to college and have that be the first time that they're hitting that bit of struggle where they really need to learn how to study or how to, do things a little bit differently so that they're able to master material. So these are some of the concerns that we commonly see in our gifted learners. And one way we are addressing that, next slide, please, is through the SENG model parent groups. So SENG stands for Supporting the Emotional Needs of the Gifted, and it is an international group housed in the US, but it stretches all around the world. And so they have this model of parent group that they started back in the 80s. And it is framed around a book called A Parent's Guide to Gifted Children, which has just recently been rewritten. So you can see a picture of the most recent updated copy there. And I see a couple of names of people who've actually been in our groups in this call, which is fantastic. And the goal is not for us to come in as experts and lecture about having gifted children. Yes, Charlene, but it's for us as a community of parents to kind of talk and learn from each other and figure out how to support each other. And Charlene just recently participated in our group that just ended last week. And, we all kind of learn from each other, and I hear things that maybe I haven't tried with my kids, and you might pick up something that you might want to try with your kids. So these are typically about 7 weeks long. At the moment, we're mainly meeting online. You can see a copy of one of our flyers on the right-hand side there. If you are a parent that is interested in joining a group, keep an eye out, because we will be sending out information about new groups forming in February. Next slide, please. So we typically kind of spend our first group talking to each other a little bit about our kids and what brought us to this group. And these common concerns come up just about every single time in that first group. And I would say almost everybody has a concern around anxiety or perfectionism or stress. Those are very common concerns. Another one that we don't necessarily all think of right away is multipotentiality. And so that's the idea of being good at or having strengths in multiple different areas. So especially in a district like ours with school choice, this can really come up in that transition to middle school and high school, where kids need to think about what that best fit school choice is for them. So sometimes, you know, we have kids who think, oh, I have to go to this school or that school because I've heard they're the best schools. But actually, they're kind of a quirky, different kid that might do better with a different school. So multipotentiality is one that if you do have a gifted learner, you might want to kind of really think about how to help them not feel overwhelmed when there's a lot of choice and lean into things that they're good at without having to feel like they're torn in so many different directions. Next slide. Just wanted to give you a minute to read this because this is a kind of quote from one of our parents that I feel like encapsulates some of the strength of the group and that experience. And so one thing we hear a lot from our parents is just kind of being able to take that deep breath, step back and say, oh, other people are dealing with something similar to what I'm dealing with. I'm not the only one who is struggling with intensities or overexcitabilities, those kind of things, and to just kind of feel that sense of community. All right, next slide. So as I said, the groups are framed around a book that has chapters, and you can see some of the topics here on a variety of issues that parents and gifted kids might be dealing with. Typically, we pick and choose which topics based on the makeup of that particular group. So we have people that sometimes join two different groups because they want to end up focusing on a couple of different things, and that is fine too. Next slide. And I just wanted to highlight, like Esther did with Legends of Learning, how we've grown over the last couple of years. Esther was one of our first parents in our October 2019 group, back when I was the only trained facilitator in the district. And I went to Dennis and said, we really need to offer this. And, you know, just for kind of point of reference, typically these groups cost about $200 for parents to attend, and they are run through a psychologist or a therapist's office. And I just had a vision that I wanted to bring this to Baltimore City without there being any barriers about buying books or paying for the group or anything like that. So we had about 16 participants in two school-based groups. We met in schools. And then during the pandemic, we, as everything did, pivoted to online groups. And what we found was that allowed us to expand in some really helpful ways so that we could meet with affinity groups. So we just finished our first 3 groups of the year. Esther ran a group for families with young children, so early childhood kiddos up to like 2nd grade. My colleague Felicity and Kristen McGinnis from Roland Park ran a group for parents of teenagers. And then the group Charlene and I participated in was for parents of twice exceptional learners. So gifted plus some sort of learning difference or challenge. And that allowed us to get parents together across all different schools, which is another really helpful piece. So fast forwarding to now in November of 2024, we now have 7 trained facilitators, which is huge. It has dramatically increased our capacity for running groups. As I said, we can run concurrent groups now, which is amazing. We used to have to say, oh, I'm so sorry, like we want to run this kind of group, but we just don't have the capacity right now. But now we do. We are planning 2 more groups, and we're planning our first Spanish language group, which I'm very excited about. As of this November, when we put our first flyer out, we actually had over 100 families register. We had about 30 families that participated regularly in the groups, but we also have some people that drop in and out and are able to get a little bit and then may choose to come back and sign up for another group in the future. So we're very pleased with how that's grown. And I think it's back to you, Mr.
Yes, it is.
Georges.
Thanks, Alex. As we wrap up on this last slide, I just want to contextualize for everyone that's listening. The reason we chose to highlight the work on Legends of Learning and the SENG Group's material is because Legends of Learning is something that we created in concert with Legends of Learning, but really attacking and opening up those bringing down those walls to identification for our younger students, pre-K and K. The state of Maryland, MSDE, has actually highlighted the work that we've done and shared that with other districts. We have other districts that are now paying for the access that we get free because we helped to create this. And our team has been invited to present at a national conference in March on this subject to the Council of Exceptional Children. Similarly, the work we're doing on SENG, we talk to our colleagues across the state, and most districts do not offer anything like that at all in the form of supporting their parents. As Alex rightly pointed out, not only do we do it, but we do it for free. And we do with people that actually have children that are like the children we're talking about, especially our twice exceptional learners in particular. And that's also something we'll be presenting at the national conference in March. It's hosted in Baltimore, but it's a national conference. So we'll be featuring the work on SENG Group, as well as talking about the work we've done to change the narrative here in Baltimore City regarding giftedness. Our final thoughts here are just on the work that we try to do on family outreach. Some of you may have encountered us at many different opportunities and events, but we have reinstated what we were doing before the pandemic, which we are hosting Get to Know Gifted nights. When you get the slides, Get to Know Gifted, there's a link there. You can sign up. We already had our first one was hosted at Armstead Gardens. Our next one's coming up at Northwood, followed by Green Street Academy and Mount Royal Elementary Middle. We host every third Tuesday of the month. We've done this since the pandemic. GAL office hours for families to just drop in, ask any questions, anything that's clarifying. A school is or is not doing something that they're supposed to do. You have questions about policy regulations, or you could just come in and listen to other people ask those questions and listen. It's not a formal presentation, but it's an opportunity for parents to kind of come in, family members to ask their questions. This year, again, I did a few years ago, I did it this year as well. I've emailed the 7,000 families. If I had an email address for a member inside of Infinite Campus, sometimes, sadly and honestly, that's the first time the family has heard that their child's been formally identified. We continue to work with schools to make sure they're following the protocols, which is upon testing to notify families. But if all else fails, Dennis sends an email out and deals with the emails that come after that. As we pointed out, Choice Fair is coming up. We'll be there. And in fact, we were given some space. We'll be hosting at least one session on the third floor of the convention center to talk about gifted. And we will also pretty much attend every single district-sponsored family event with very few exceptions, and as well as school-sponsored events. And finally, the last one is not really centrally based, but it's really school-based. But to us, it's the most foundational, which are individualized learning plans, which to me is a contract between the student, the family, and the school about how the school is going to best serve the needs of that particular learner now that they have been seen. It's one thing to see a student, but now that you've seen them, you've got to do better by that student. And the ILPs align brilliantly with the work that Heather Nolan, who will be speaking next, about SLPs. They don't conflict. They actually complement one another. So Heather will be speaking about that shortly. Other than that, we're done with the presentation. We're open to any questions. I don't know how you normally handle this, but we thank you for giving us the bandwidth to present tonight.
Thank you for presenting, for sure. This is great information, really good. The flyer also with the link is perfect for families to click on. It's in the chat, and we'll definitely share it out on PCAB social media and also in our probably next month newsletter as well to keep people posted and connected. Team, do we have any questions in the chat?
There is one in the chat from Warwick, and Alexandra, I believe she was looking for a little bit more clarity on the question based on her response.
Yeah, I'm not sure what part of it is confusing.
Was it because I'm looking at the why not standardized testing accommodations for GT evaluations? And I think what I'm saying is that they are standardized for the GT evaluation, but I'm not sure that that's what you were asking with the strategy instruction on time management.
Yeah, so a couple of things that again, I get that you all have been doing this successfully, so I'm not trying to to critique in that way. But ultimately, I think a couple of questions always come to mind for me, and as Dennis knows, I'm not shy, so I'll ask my questions. Number one, as far as I know, GAL is only tested in kindergarten, and
Nope.
I'm not aware
No,
of
no,
other.
we universally screen everyone in kindergarten, but we are open to screening every kid at any, as long as 12 months has elapsed, we will continue to test students upon either recommendation of the school, student
Okay.
self-advocacy, or parent requests.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are they rescreened in 2 or 3 grades later? Like for example, if a kid comes into school and that kid has not had the kind of prep or help from the environments that they might be coming from, you can't help that, right? But after a couple of years of school, now they've been exposed, they're reading, their literacy is up a bit. Are they retested automatically, or is it only if somebody recommends?
We don't have a universal screening set for another grade, but keep in mind we have universal data for students that are achievement driven. Now, we don't identify primarily based on achievement, but those are good indicators of a student who should be flagged and then rescreened for ability. So case in
Okay.
point, we tested over 8,000 kids last year. 6,000 of those kids were kindergarten, but 2,000 of those kids were above the age of kindergarten. And that was, again, based on parent requests, mostly teacher referrals, talent spotting, to the point that you were just making, that a student has finally settled in, has kind of, some of those barriers have come down. Now we should then test the student again.
Awesome.
But yeah, we don't have a second go of universal screening. And quite frankly, and not for the wrong reason, but for just an honest answer, that's about $100,000 investment. Every grade band that you add on to universally screen, that's about $100,000. I'm not saying it's money that would not be well spent. It's just not budgeted.
Okay. Okay. Well, it's good to understand this in the chat. So my son, I have 3 children attending Baltimore City Public
Yep.
Schools. They're all been GAL identified. And my son is twice exceptional. And so later on, I think in the 3rd grade or something, we were informed that for kids with with these kinds of exceptions, there can be testing accommodations. They can be given a little bit of extra time. They get to stretch their legs and so on. Things that kids who are not identified as such generally don't get the accommodations. And so for me, I mean, the challenge is prior to them being formally identified, you're dealing with a pool of restless kindergartners. And so my question is, do they automatically get that kind of accommodation where maybe
Yep.
in smaller batches they get to do those things?
Every single student that I upload the 6,000 students at the end of August, and every one of them is set to untimed, specifically so that they can stop the test and go do something else or come back on another day when it suits them. Because in kindergarten, we don't know yet who has been. There are kids that are not yet formally identified as having special learning needs, right? And so I just assume that every kid could benefit from that opportunity. And so I default to that. Now, are there cases where a school manually adds someone and forgets to default it to untimed? Yes. But I will tell you, thousands and thousands of kids every year that we test automatically default to untimed for that very same reason. And also, if for some reason something went awry on that particular test, or for whatever reason, if that was bubbled up to me by the family or by the school, we have 2 options. One, we could retest the student, certainly in a one-on-one situation. We prefer one-on-one, two students at most at a time. But we've also, and I just did this the other day, I went out to a school and I administered a paper version, the COGAT. It's comparable in what it's measuring, and I do it in paper and pencil. Some kids do better in paper and pencil, and we're more than happy to use as an alternative. So we do provide all those accommodations. There's also things with the NAGLER in particular, you can do in a large font and large prints of the work too. So there are also some visual settings there, and the test itself is specifically designed with the colors so as not to inhibit kids that might be colorblind and not yet have that diagnosis.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dennis.
Sure.
Thank you. Great information. And we appreciate the sharing, the questions, and the deeper understanding. So there'll be more. Dr. Ryan, did you have another question?
Yeah, just really quickly, Mr. Jutras, for the families that are not aware, how could they advocate for their child to be retested? Similar to what Warwick was speaking to. So maybe a few years have gone by. You know,
Yep.
what would you advise them? What would you advise them to what steps would you advise them to take?
First and foremost, go to the Gifted and Advanced Learning website, the page on the City Schools website, fill out the referral form. That referral form comes directly to me. I then pull up the student's record and I reach out directly to the family, usually that same day. And I can't think of a single situation when I have not told the school that they must go ahead and retest the student or test them for the first time. The only reason, just quite honestly, the only reason I would say not to retest is if we have no reason to believe that the initial test was not optimal, and if they took the test like maybe 5 or 6 months ago, I would say let's wait. Because I also don't want to feed into this frenzy of like, I got to keep testing, got to keep testing, got to keep testing. But if 12 months or close to 12 months have elapsed, then I've 100% have said, go ahead, let's go ahead and do this. And let's find out what we can find out. I want to know every student as best we possibly can and serve them. But again, the advice there was go to the GAL page on the City Schools website, pick the referral form, complete it. It comes right to me, and I email back to the family right away.
If I can just highlight too, as a parent of a twice exceptional learner, I know that there are kids that this one particular test may not be the best measure of who they are. And I will say that there are kids that we've tried the Naglieri with them twice. It hasn't worked. We've done the pencil and paper version that Dennis was just mentioning. Or there is other assessment data that we have through an IEP team process or outside testing. We can use those individualized cognitive assessment scores as well. So we really want to catch every possible kid. And we're working with the GAL leads at each school to try and make sure that we are catching every kid.
Excellent. All righty. Thank you so much. Now we will jump into our next presenter. Appreciate the Gifted and Advanced Learning team, and we're going to jump into Ms. Heather Nolan, who is the Baltimore City Public Schools Director for Academic Recovery. Heather, take it away, please.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the time. As mentioned, my name is Heather Nolan. I am the Director of Academic Recovery in the Academics Office. A little bit about myself. I am Peruvian American. I came to the US at the age of 4, speaking only Spanish. And learning English at school. I've been working with the Baltimore City Public School System for 15 years now, and I have 3 children in a Baltimore City Public School, a 6th grader, a 4th grader, and a kindergartner. 2 of the 3 are identified as gifted in advance. So I get Dennis's notices and emails and see all of the wonderful work that he and his team do on behalf of our students and our families in this area. So just want to shout out Dennis real quickly around that. But I am here to really talk to you about student learning plans and how student learning plans really serve as a mechanism by which we can strengthen our relationships with families, specifically the relationships between school staff members and families in support of students and their learning. Gonna go right here. So what I want to make sure that I'm able to cover with you by the end of our time together is that, one, as Dennis had mentioned, it's been a bit of time since even I came in front of our PCAB organization to talk about student learning plans. So make sure that I'm grounding around what are they, what's the purpose of them, how do they serve as a key strategy in building our family and school relationships, that we understand what the role of the family is in the student learning plan process, that our families and our community members leave this time with me here, knowing how to access their student learning plan, and most importantly, that there's an opportunity for you where I would love to gather feedback around how we can increase awareness and use of our student learning plans among our families. At the foundation of this is really the work that we center around family engagement and our call to action to improve our families' experiences with our schools, to ensure that our families see and are able to feel how we care for them, and that we create opportunities of dialogue and rich engagement between families in our schools. And we do that by hosting strategic collaboration, by grounding it in our blueprint work, and engaging in areas of success. And so we'll talk more about how the student learning plans are really grounded around these family engagement beliefs and priorities of our school system. But before that, I want to just draw a little bit to what our research is telling us nationwide. And this was a study done across 71 of our Title I schools. So Title I schools are those schools that serve high populations of low-income students and families. And they said that student performance in math and reading improved at a 40 to 50% higher rate when teachers did 3 things with families. And the reason why I want to talk about this and just ground the conversation in this is because we also share this information with our school leaders and our teachers when we are engaging with them in professional learning. And we also engage with our new educators around this same study. These 3 things that, when done effectively and consistently, show that student improvement increases in math and reading significantly. And so those key levers are: 1, that a teacher is making a positive personal connection with every family member. That the second is that teachers are helping family members understand how well their child is performing at school. And that the third is that our teachers are empowering families to support the learning at home. There is so much that is done at the schoolhouse level, but there is so much more that is also done at the home level, and it's around creating those synergies. So again, personal connection, understanding how the child is performing, and then empowering that family to do that. And so I put that forward to you because that is what the student learning plan is really serving as that vehicle to do. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about those 3 areas. But really, the student learning plans is a mechanism, a tool, a resource, a guide to seek and enhance those existing relationships between students, families, and school that ensure that the student voice, the family expertise about that student is really centered in every conversation, that families leave those conversations understanding better how their student is performing and what strategies we are doing at the school level to support that student to be their very best, and that to equip our families with some resources and access to resources to support them at home. And so, pause 1 second. I, first and foremost, am a mom, and the door is knocking, and I got to let my kid in from their soccer practice. So 1 second. Commercial break. Hopefully everyone had a little bit of a stretch. So again, going back to those student learning plans. So as I was mentioning, centering and strengthening those relationships, grounding in the expertise of that family member, the interests of the students, and really thinking about that personalized approach to how we support each and every student. And so how we do that through this plan is that we got to get to know our families and our students first. And so there's questions that really help guide that understanding. We share information about how our students are performing academically, but what are we seeing also that's happening that's influencing those academic performance, like student attendance or tardiness at the school level, and that we are grounding every conversation around year-long goals that that student is making, and then what the strategies are if can take place at home, and doing that all within a centralized system so that everyone has visibility to it. As Dennis was mentioning in the at the prior presentation, right, we've heard all of our gifted and advanced learner students have an individualized learning plan, and that is one piece of the supports that we offer our students. The student learning plan is really meant to serve as that umbrella plan for all students annually, regardless of who that student is. And why that's so important is because the student learning plan, as that annual plan for a student, starts at the very start of the school year. Before any identification is done, before any testament or reassessment is done, there should be a plan in place. There should be conversations that are happening between the family and the school in building that relationship and a goal set for that student. And then all of these other plans that are in play such a pivotal role in getting the full picture of that student, are all connected and speaking to one another. So we have that comprehensive view. So you have, and for space of this slide, I use the acronyms, but I'll spell them out here. You have that individualized learning plan for a gifted and advanced student. You also have an IEP, the Individualized Education Plan, that really speaks to, for our students with disabilities, what those accommodations and specific learning goals are. You have the English Learner Development Plan that speaks to, again, that English learner development for our multilingual students. There are the 504s, the SSTs, the student support team plans, and the attendance. Those are more short-term plans that are reviewed on a shorter frequency basis to really study whether any transitions or changes need to be done for that student. But again, I just want to emphasize that student learning plan really serves as that umbrella for all students. And I'll go a little bit into the interconnectedness of some of these in the next couple slides. So as I was mentioning, this creation of that student learning plan starts at the very beginning of the school year. A lot of my teachers, even my family members, are like, why do you ask me these questions about my kid at the start of every year? Because kids change. Family dynamics, family resources, family needs, those change, and we need to capture those. When you put those things in writing, that builds mental that just builds the memory muscle for folks and adults to really help and support and remember and follow through. And so we work around that, establishing that relationship, understanding who that family is, and establishing what the goal for that student is. At the beginning of the year, we're looking at setting a target that all students have, a student learning plan, by December 13th. How that can happen through back to school events. That can happen through the parent-teacher conference windows. You see that we've aligned the beginning of year date to the second quarter parent-teacher conference window, because we know a lot of new information comes in, but we also know a lot of new students may come in. So we want to capture all of our students. And the focus of that time is really about building the rapport, identifying what the supports are outside of the school building that our families and our students are going to need to be successful, setting a goal for that year that is academic or personal interest based, and then aligning the right strategies and supports in school and at home. At the middle of the year, which happens around March 7th, again, around that time that conversations are happening about the academic performance of the student, or family learning events are taking place at the school level, we really want to focus on grounding on how our students are performing so far. So that's, again, getting families know how their students are performing academically. And then that third point I said from the research of how are we ensuring that our families know what techniques and strategies they can do at home to support their student, and equipping and empowering them with those. So that's really another focus of the middle of year. Then at the end of your conversation, it's really that culminating conversation to say and celebrate for the student, for the family, the amount of growth that the student has exhibited, not just academically, but also from a social development and emotional development standpoint. And doing that and setting up some conversations about what they can do over the summertime, how they can engage in summer programming and offerings that our school district offers or the city offers, and then how they can prepare for the upcoming school year. And so again, we really want to start from the beginning of the year and look at the end of the year as that part to be reflective and to celebrate, and then also think about what's that road ahead of us as they're transitioning to that next grade. So what can families expect around the collaboration between the school and their family home? One is that we have this person named the navigator. And why we named them the navigator, they're really a school staff member that is assigned at the school level to a student that is really there to serve as that partner for the family and the student. So that family member and student know that they have that person, that one person go to that can help them be that connector and that champion. And that navigator is really there to conference, build those relationships with students and families so that they understand interests, the aspirations and goals, the hopes, dreams, any of the barriers, start making those connections to other resources within the school, that they're discussing with the family member that student's performance and what progress they're making towards their goal, and that they're helping that family identify strategies in school and at home to support that learning. Again, I want to go back to that Title I study around increasing student achievement. Teachers did 3 things: built relationships, helped families understand their students' performance, and empowered them to try some activities at home to support that student, or just build some additional resources for that student to be successful at school. So those are those 3 things, and the student learning plan and that navigator role is really intended to reinforce those 3. So how are families access the student learning plan? Student learning plan is found in our parent portal, and that is really, really important because the parent portal is where they go to find grades, to find records of a student's attendance, to find records of a student's immunizations. It's where that family goes to get all of their student information and see how that student is performing academically and also around attendance and other requirements. And the important thing also of having it in the parent portal system, and this view here just provides a family member step-by-step guide of how to go in, is that regardless of whether the student transfers during the school year to another school or at the end of that school year to a different school or a different grade, that student learning plan goes with them wherever they go within Baltimore City Public Schools. And so that information, that wealth of investment and knowledge about that student and family goes to that new school or to that new classroom so that they can have continuous conversations and aren't intended to start from the very beginning. I talked a little bit earlier about that getting to know you part and building that connection. We start first by asking questions, and these are aspirational questions. These are all about in celebrating who our students are and who our families are, but also in being able to identify what are those supports that they might need so that we can be as comprehensive and wraparound as possible, especially in the investments we've made around the community school structure. And so we have questions for our students. Those are differentiated by grade band. And then we have questions for our families. I forgot to mention that by having also the student learning plan that is editable in Infinite Campus, we have a Google Translate function. And so for any family that does not speak English at home, they can select from their dropdown their home language and have all of this information already translated to them. And that's super powerful when we're thinking about how we make our connections and build those relationships with our multilingual families. The second part here is around the goal setting. And again, you set the goal at the beginning of the year, and then you track it at the middle of year, and then you celebrate during the middle and also at the end of the year to reflect on the progress. And there's a couple things that happen at that goal setting process. This is where you start talking about how your student is performing academically. We have data that is already showing up in that system. You're not having to fish 15 different locations. You can see how your student is doing on their diagnostics. We have information of how they're doing from an attendance standpoint. And then we have a section where the navigator is working with the student and the family member based on that information, based on what the interests are and what the focus is, to build out a goal. So we want to make sure that our family members through this step have that opportunity to understand what kind of assessments their students are being tested on. What is that assessment really telling them about the student? What is other information about the student? That families leave those conversations knowing if the student is on grade level or not. That the navigator can share with them some examples around what grade level skills look like, what are the expectations for that student at the end of the year, and also have that space to write out what are some next steps that each of these adults in support of the student can do, again, in school and at home to support and really link those resources and tips to continue the work of supporting our student. I want to take a minute to really highlight the section that I scrolled around in blue. It might be hard to see on the page here, but I'll walk you through it. This is here for all of our, again, I said that all of our students deserve a student learning plan. They should have this option of engaging in this goal setting process, regardless of who they are. We also know that some of our other plans in place for students based on their identification also have a goal for that student. It might be project-based specific, like in the ILP, or it might be skill-based specific, like in a student's IEP if they are a student with disability. If that is the main goal that the student, the family, and the navigator agree to and focus that this should be it, in the student learning plan, all they have to do is check the box to say the student's focus goal for the year is noted either in the IOP or in the IEP, and they can go on their way. But we also want to give our students and families an opportunity to set an additional goal. And so we still have that space in the student learning plan. I know from one of my students, a real focus for them was on their ILP goal, but I also knew that my student needed to continue to work on his reading fluency and his writing skills. And so that became his student learning plan goal for the year that all of his teachers had visibility to and really worked to support him during the classroom. And then I had some activities to do with him at home when possible. Lastly, I want to close out by saying and sharing a parent perspective that we gathered just last year about their experience with the student learning plan. They really saw it as an opportunity to help them understand their child's learning process and gave them insight on how that child was progressing. And they felt included in their child's academic planning and goals. And that's really what this is. It's that strengthening of that relationship. It is feeling included, heard, respected, and valued around that student's academic trajectory, and that there is a true partnership between the teacher and the family member. And that is just one of the many success stories we have heard around the creation and use of the student learning plans and having it visible across so many individuals. And so I want to close out again by sharing these two discussion items, time permitting, because I know I started a little bit later, but it's really thinking about what are some additional approaches about how we can strengthen relationships between families and schools to improve outcomes for students through the use of the student learning plans. And if we want meaningful conversations to happen between families and staff, what are additional ways we can increase awareness of the SLP and its value? To close, we do have a student learning plan page on our district website for families, and we've been working with our communications team to share some communication nuggets to our families through our e-newsletters, and we're also continuing to work with our teachers and our school leaders to continue to communicate the importance, the value, the relevance of these plans as we work to support our students. So I thank you for your time and open to questions, but also open to feedback around these two questions I pose here.
Thank you so much, Heather. What we see in the chat is, how can a navigator be identified, or where can this information of a navigation be found if not accessible to families?
Sure. The navigator is identified by the school leader and the school leader's what we call an SLP ambassador, which is really that overarching champion that helps rally the whole school around it, around the student learning plan. I know it's very common that we just tap in the math teacher or the literacy teacher to serve as that navigator for students in a homeroom classroom. But there's so much strength across all of our buildings, and we really want to look at all of this untapped resource that we might have, either as through our resource teacher or through a school counselor that can also serve as a navigator. Now, for a parent, when you go into the parent portal and you click on your student's SLP, you will see on the SLP tool the name of your student's navigator or who has been assigned, if the school has taken that step to, in the system, assign the navigator to that student. I know our schools have done a lot of creative ways to think about how they best match a student to a navigator. And so there's a lot of variability that we are seeing across our schools. But there is a place within the parent portal where you would be able, in that plan, to see who that student's navigator is.
Excellent,
I'm seeing,
thank you.
I
Yep,
am
you see the other one?
seeing that chat for students in 4th grade. But I'm glad the results are mapped to the SLP. So, against the plan measured if there is no quantifiable objective. Okay, thank you, Mr. St. John, for your question. So within the student learning plan, we also, and that's the beauty of having it already in the Infinite Campus system and having information about our students already loaded in there as it migrates. Sorry, I don't mean to get too techie and wonky about that, but it migrates right into that plan, and teachers don't have to manually enter anything into the plan, except the conversation we have with our students and families. But the MCAP result for the prior year will pre-populate into that student learning plan. I did not show this on the screen there when I did the screenshot, but there is a whole top section at the beginning of the year that shares the student's prior year information. So it'll give what the student's MCAP results were at the elementary and middle grade level, as well as what their end of year diagnostic results were, on top of additional information like what their attendance rates were and things like that. A high school, it's much more comprehensive to include GPA, how they performed on MCAP, SAT averages, with the focus around the college and career readiness. And so that is already mapped automatically into the SLPs. You raise a really great question about progress against the plan if there's no quantifiable objective and goal. The goal is that when a navigator is working with the with the family member and the student, that they are setting a quantifiable goal, an objective at the beginning of the year that they could measure at the end of the year. We have a resource guide available for teachers that helps them see different types of goals across subject areas, across focus areas that allow them to kind of use a sentence structure, a sentence starter, and then set a target, so that when you're meeting at the middle of the year and then you're meeting at the end of the year, you are able to progress monitor and see the growth from that beginning of year to the growth at the end of the year. I hope that answers some of your questions.
Yes, it was helpful. But as I stare at my students' SLP form on my screen, I think it's tough to quantify anything. So I think it sounds like there is some methodology that you have that's really good.
Can you
But
share more about what you mean by quantify anything?
yeah, so for example, my student recently, my now fifth grader, just came from fourth grade, just did the MCAP. And so when I go in Infinite Campus, I see that it says, he's at level 3, or his result was level 3 or something like that. So, he did very well. But ultimately, I wanted some detail about the various areas of his two MCAP assessments to see where
Oh,
was he challenged, and then could
I
we
see.
quantifiably raise those,
Okay, thank you for that context. Yes, that's really helpful. So part of the balance, right, is information overload all in one page. And so we're just trying to give a nugget to start the conversation. And by you just raising that, right, and sharing like, what is more I want to dig into my MCAP, right? That is the conversation you have with the staff, the navigator. There should be a home report that is sent home to you around that student's MCAP results, where during that conversation, you can unpack that together a little bit more. And then you can work to building that goal for the following year to say like, hey, the goal for my student is that they're maintaining that level 3, right? Or they're going to a level 4, but we're working on a particular domain. And that gets to that item number 2 of the study around like really helping that family member understand how that student's performing. Unfortunately, just given the format of that tool and not to overwhelm already what is a lot of information on that page, we are asking our teachers and our school staff members to make sure that we are equipping them with the accompanying reports to help them. Is the SLP a mandate for COMAR? No, the SLP is not a mandate. It is not a mandate from COMAR, part of it. Dennis is good to always champion that as part of the board policy for GAL. IOPs are recognized there as interwoven in that policy. The SLPs, the student learning plans, really came out of the information we were receiving from families and school staff members and students during the pandemic, when we were talking and planning for how to return to school sites safely and how to disrupt the interrupted learning our students have. And one of those major strategies and levers to do that, based on the feedback that we collected and seeing how it was done in other school districts, was to develop and implement that student learning plan, so that everyone is looking and grounding on one document, one conversation, to really focus on how our students are going to get back to being whole again after that really disruptive time in COVID. And I would say that we continue to feel the ramifications around. So even though we are back full force in our schools, our students, our families are still feeling the struggles of that COVID pandemic. And so this is the plan to help really support and ground on those supports for our students. So it's not mandated, but it is a priority of our school districts as a mechanism for strengthening relationships, but really honing in on the supports for our students so that all of our students are achieving at great rates, as observed in MCAP or graduation rates, or any other, or an important data point that's identified by the parent.
Excellent. Great. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely follow up, and like I said, we'll have this posted tomorrow so people can watch it. We appreciate the information that you shared and your time this evening, and let you get in as well, because that's normal. That's what we do. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much.
And Dennis said the MSD blueprint does require all plans for all students, so the SLPs do meet that requirement. So Excellent.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, just a quick, if we have any high school parents in the house, the MSDE Blueprint for Success for any student after the age of, after the grade 10, that are not identified as college and career ready, they must have a college and career ready plan that really outlines for the family and the student how they're going to meet those college and career readiness requirements. And instead of creating yet another plan for our students, that plan is the student learning plan. And this is where our district, I will say, is already ahead of the curve than other counties because we have this infrastructure already placed and we've already started these conversations with our students and our staff members. So yes, that is true from the blueprint. Thanks for that connection, Dennis.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. We'll keep this moving right along, and we are going committee updates. Share my screen to help our committee teams get theirs. One can see my screen. Should be the budget committee up there. And is Malik on?
He is not.
I don't see Malik. All right, so we'll keep it moving. So just the budget development process is currently underway. Here's what you need to know. Principals are required to host 3 budget engagement and meetings. Your school's principals will learn more about how you can share what kinds of things you want to see at your school next year. Some important dates. It's already started from October 14th through January 17th. Priority engagement sessions. February 20th to March 14th, the community budget forums. February 24th to March 14th, the collaborative, 25th to March 21st, and February 26th to March 25th, budget feedback surveys. Please, as families and parents, end your budget meetings with your school. This is very important. This is how you get your voice heard. This is how you get the resources for your school allocated the correct way. And they're great opportunities. Here's a quick video on budget.
So Jason, the audio isn't coming through for the video.
Oh, wait, hold on. Thank you. Share sound. Thank you, Dr. Ryan.
Schools community, it's time to talk about your school's budget and how you can get involved. School budgets are a reflection of the priorities, goals, and vision of all students, teachers, parents, and everyone who makes our schools work. And your school budget should work for you. The first thing to understand is how much money we're talking about and where it comes from. Baltimore City Public Schools budget is nearly $2 billion each year. Of that, approximately 71% come from the state of Maryland, and 27% comes from Baltimore City, and 2% comes from federal and special funds.
That $2 billion number is largely determined by how many students are enrolled across the whole city school system. The more students in our schools, the more money we get. Since most of that money comes from taxes, that means most of the money comes from us. Therefore, it is important that we have a say in how much money is spent. With me so far?
The next thing to understand is how much money is distributed to each school. About 75 to 80% of the district's $2 billion budget goes directly to individual schools, but the other 20 to 25% also serve schools, but indirectly through services like trash removal, buses, NCA passes, school police, athletics, electricity bills, and etc. A portion of the overall budget also goes to district staff who help keep everything running smoothly across the city. The amount of money distributed to schools is determined based on the expected student population at that school each school year.
Some schools receive additional funding to serve students with disabilities or who are gifted, as well as students who are also in the process of learning English.
Some schools also receive additional funds if they serve families with low incomes. All of these factors help to ensure equity across our city.
The third thing to understand is that you get a say in how your school's budget is spent. This is the fun part. Once your principal knows how much money will be in the budget for the year, they get to determine how to use that money. This is why your principal needs to hear from you.
Principals are required to host 3 budget engagement meetings to share information and gather input and feedback from their school community. The first meeting is the priority engagement session, which is your opportunity to tell your principal what's most important to you at school. When you go to that meeting, be prepared to share what kinds of things you want to see at your school next year.
The second meeting is the budget forum, where your principal will present a draft of the school budget. Your principal should be prepared to show you how they implemented your feedback into the budget. When you go to that meeting, prepare to listen closely and ask questions to understand how your priorities were considered. You can also give feedback at that meeting since the budget being presented is still just a draft.
The third meeting is the budget review. This is where your principal will present the final budget that has been submitted to the district. Your principal should present any final changes that have been made to the budget based on the district guidance. It's important to note that some of your priorities might not fit in the final budget. In that case, this is a chance for you to help brainstorm other ways that students, parents, and the school community can come together to help meet any remaining needs. Remember, it's your money and it's your school. Attend your school's budget meetings this year, make it work for you, and get involved.
If it's a cat litter, yes.
Hey City Schools community, it's time to talk about your school.
There's funds allocated to schools to help families support their children's educational success. So urge parents and community members to reach out to your school principals to apply for the Parent and Family Engagement Title I grant. Those applications are due December 6th, and they're very easy to complete, so you can be a part of that process with your school principal. And Communications Committee, that is myself and our vice chair. So we've been celebrating American Education Week this week. So we've had posts on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Throughout the week, PCAB board members shared their thoughts on the importance of community education, teacher impact on our families, and empowering parents in education. Special shout out to our board members and admins for making this happen. Dr. Charlene Stewart, Charlene Faison, Chris Patterson, Trinae Phillips-Davis, Malik Parker, Shartae Anderson, and Kayla Jones. So thank you all so much for your support and sharing your stories, pictures, everything about American Education Week. And please catch up on our campaign. Follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So PCAB Outreach. Board members attended session 3 of the FACE Fellowship at Furman Templeton Elementary School on November 20th, where we discussed how to utilize family voice to inform decision-making and provide opportunities for engagement, and the importance of stakeholder engagement in the budget process while focusing on academic success and overall school improvement. We had a great meeting. There were like 20 schools in present. So the goal and the focus is to make families partners with the school and be completely integrated. And that's where we all want to be. And of course, live stream update, we have moved to YouTube now. So it'll show on Facebook the next day, but we are live streaming through YouTube now, just an easier platform to use, more integrated. So you'll get us on YouTube. And Family Engagement Committee, Trinae is not here this evening. So the monthly meeting day and time, because she is at a family engagement event herself as a parent. So she's doing the work of PCAB every Tuesday of the month, 1:15 to 1:45. Their focus will be strengthening community channels, increasing family involvement in school decision-making, building community partnerships, and supporting student and family wellness. And Policy Committee, Ms. Charlene.
Hello, everyone. On this past Tuesday, I did attend the City Board of School Commissioners Policy Committee meeting. So they had a couple of topics that they're looking at. What their goal is, or what their task is to look at current city policies and regulations and make sure they are lined up with what state law says, or to make sure that they're, in place and equitable to all students. So, two of the topics that were on their meeting for this week were an update to the community school strategy, and they also looked at an media relations. With media relations, they're looking to have credentialing uh, requirements for school events. So the purpose of that is to make it safe for patrons, the staff of the schools, and the players to have people who are not supposed to be on the fields not be there. And so they want to have a credentialing process so that media can get the pictures and celebrate our students, but in a safe manner. They had a committee report. Um, they gave an update on the heroin and opioid in the schools. Some they will have one uh, opioid incident in the schools because they had to use Narcan. So this report gets created because the schools, I guess, they have Narcan on hand. And once they use that Narcan, they have to notify the appropriate people that they need to replenish it. So one of the things they're looking to do also is to get a grant, I believe, to either get more Narcan on hand, but also to educate students on how to administer the Narcan. So that was something that was interesting to learn about. Their next meeting will be December 17th. And one of the topics that they're looking at, and this is probably going to be a hot topic, which is the student use of portable electronic devices. So what they want to do is to clarify and enhance the system and look at challenges of having students have their cell phones while in school. Some of the considerations they're looking at is to what extent should the cell phone be used or limited in the school, and should the same rules apply system-wide. So that will be discussed at their December 17th meeting, and it will go for a first reading at the school board's public meeting on February 25th. And I'm going to put a link in the chat to school policies because I did not know that there was a link to find all the school policies. So if there's ever a policy that you want to look up, you can go right to this link and see what it's supposed to do. And then that way you can understand it and provide comment if there was something you wanted to share with PCAB that you might want us to share with the bigger board. So I'll put that link in the chat now.
Thank you so much, Charlene. Great, appreciate you. And Dr. Ryan, Teaching and Learning Committee.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Am I coming through clearly? Good, good. So I did attend the Teaching and Learning Committee meeting for the board. It was on Wednesday, November 6th. So it wasn't on their normal Tuesdays that they normally meet. So I was kind of like in a listening mode because I wasn't really prepared to join the meeting on that particular day. But they did have the office from Secondary Success and Innovation. They did do a presentation at that particular meeting, kind of providing an update as far as graduation and things of that nature. The next meeting is scheduled for December 3rd. So that's the first Tuesday, I believe, in December. And so I'll be better prepared to kind of be able to be stationary and take notes at that particular meeting. But at that meeting, I believe they're going to talk about the math and literacy, their goals, math and literacy for that at that particular meeting. And then the other thing I did was, or that I have on my to-do list, is there were a few individuals that have an interest in joining the PCAB Teacher and Learning Committee. And so I'll be sending out an email to those group of individuals to kind of gauge their interest and see when we can meet, and if possible, try to get us to meet before that December 3rd meeting. And then, and then try to see if they can join that board meeting, that committee board meeting on December 3rd. So that's all I have for my report out.
Appreciate you, Dr. Ryan.
Yep.
And Marvin, would you like to jump on general announcements?
Yes, sir. Good evening, everybody. Our general announcements includes our fall 2024 public meeting with Dr. Santelises. So just to mark your calendars, our public meeting for December 19th, 2024 has been changed to Tuesday, December the 12th, 2024. So December 12th, 2024 is the new date for our public meeting. BCAB began gathering questions for from our greater community and our board members in October. Out of that meeting, 25 questions were submitted from both the public input survey and the PCAB board members. So we have a target of 13 to 15 questions that we want to gather to submit to Dr. Santelises for our next public meeting with her. These topics fall within the following categories: the budget, family, community engagement, policy, communications, teaching and learning, school safety and wholeness, special education and services, and students also with disabilities, and just other general and other questions. Our PCAB board members have voted on questions between November 12th and today, November 21st. Our final list of questions will be submitted by the close of business tomorrow, Friday, November the 22nd. Our PCAB members have convened for our next private meeting on Thursday, December 5th. So this is about 2 weeks away, where we will make a final decision on the questions that we have listed for the public, and then we'll be assigning board members to ask questions during that meeting as well. Questions that's not covered during this fall meeting will be pushed to the spring 2025 meeting with Dr. Santelises, and that date and time is to be determined at a later time. Then there will also again be no public meeting on December the 19th. That meeting has been changed to December the 12th, and that concludes our general announcements.
Excellent.
Jason, can I just make, this is Tina, sorry, can I just make one edit to that?
Please do.
Thursday is not, the 12th is not a Tuesday, the 12th is a Thursday. I just want to make sure everybody knows it's Thursday, December 12th. And we're also hoping to share at that meeting the school system calendar for next year. Just a quick highlight, so folks are interested to learn about the calendar, please come early because Dr. Santelises will be joining at 7 p.m. that evening. So we'll do calendar first. Thank you, Jason. Sorry to jump in.
No, that's perfect. Thank you always, Tina. You always can jump in. Don't worry about it. You're part of the team. So we want to say thank you all again for joining us tonight. Sorry I took 4 minutes extra of your time, but for more information, please visit us on pcabbaltimore.org. Get involved, join a committee. You don't have to be a PCAB member to be a committee member, but we have some great committee leaders. Please join the committee. And definitely follow us on all social media platforms. It's exciting. We put up some good content. You can steal it and reshare it. It's great. Looking forward to seeing you all at our next public meeting, especially with Dr. Santelises. And thank you and have a great night. Thank you so much.
Hey, Jason, real quick